I'm going to try expanding my reach a bit more by talking about some different stuff. I really want to do a video on comics soon since I've been wanting to talk about Kingdom Come and Immortal Hulk for a while now. In my efforts for world domination, I decided to try something other than manga or manhwa, and that is manhwa, but spelled differently. I selected 8 different ones that caught my eye, so by the end of this video, we will see if indeed China number 1.
China number 1! 天上太阳红呀红彤彤哎，心中的太阳。
Feng Shen Ji has 182 chapters, following Emperor Shang, a man that has declared war on the gods to bring them to an end and bring about the age of man, as is foretold in the prophecy. However, this is not his story, but instead his son's story, who witnesses his father be defeated by the gods and is also killed, but is given a second chance at life thanks to his mother, who's actually a god in disguise. Awakening in a new body, he's taken in as a mining slave, and so begins his journey to rise up and claim vengeance on the gods who killed his mother and father. You sort of get lost in the sauce with this story by the end of the series, but looking back at where Ah Go or Wu Gang, the true main character of the story, began, he really grows as a character a lot, and on top of that, the series ends up giving a good amount of really interesting side characters with their own bones to pick with the gods. And before I say the names of my favorite characters, my Chinese pronunciation could be classified as a hate crime, so just lower your expectations. I'll try this one. Okay, my personal favorites being Ni Tian and Xixing. The structure of the fight reminds me a lot of Bleach, where you'll have 5 to 6 fights in the story, which jumps back and forth until the climax, where you end up getting very strong turning points or resolutions for the characters. I think the artwork in this is really impressive, especially for the cover arts and the close-ups of the face, and if you like damn near non-stop action, then I think you'll love this. There were admittedly certain stretches that lost my interest for a moment, but that is bound to happen when you are focusing on characters you're yet to build an attachment towards, and the dialogue is rough, but I'll mostly attribute that to translation issues, because some lines are hilarious, especially when you read them out loud. Still, despite reading all of this for about a week, by the end of the story it felt like this was something I had been following for a very long time. Anytime there's something horror related, I feel like I've said this, but horror and I have a weird dynamic. Love reading it, hate watching it or playing it. Thankfully, I'm a manga and whatever the hell else I'm reading channel and not a gaming one. Shen Zi is about a boy who has a weird dream about a ghost town before his birthday. He tells his parents and they freak out, making it way obvious that they know about this place, but they're trying to play it off. Then they end up dead as the fuck, and the weird spirit that was appearing in the boy's dream seems to be responsible. He uncovers his parents' stuff, which reveals they were a part of a research group that found a meteorite near a town that is now abandoned, so he must go there to uncover the truth. Even though this might sound interesting, it's the revelations later on that really got me hooked when he visits the town nearby. The imagery in this manga is really dope. Reminds me a bit of Ajin with the spirits design, and the art style of the characters reminds me a lot of Fujimoto's work. As a horror manhwa, I think it does a pretty good job of making me want to read the next chapter, which is very important to me if I haven't mentioned that 1,000 times before. I'm certain that this one is worth your time, especially since it's very easy to catch up to. Nan Hao Sheng Feng is a comedy series. I covered this I think over 2 years ago, and so if you want my full thoughts or well just more of them, then you could check out this recommendation video. But it's just about 2 homies and their friends at school doing the dumbest of things, so it's a very easy read. There are some moments later on where the story does get pretty serious and you explore the characters, but for the most part this is just a great comedy. It's really tricky to pull off comedy in reading form sometimes, but this just nails it, mainly with the reactions of the characters for the punchline. I don't really have much more to say about this other than do yourself a favor and just have a good time. You deserve it. I actually had no idea this was a manhwa. Ayeshas Secret is another story I covered in a previous video. The art once again caught my eye, which you will notice is a rather common occurrence for this video, but for an 11-chapter story, this is a great murder mystery, with the sick twist as long as you don't pay attention to the cover art too much. Sorry. But this follows a girl that is killed off by a member of her family, and now that family member believes they are going insane because she shows up alive again. It's actually just one big gaslighting session. So it is uncovering the mystery of how the hell is this chick alive that is the big catch. I do feel, however, that this would benefit a lot from a novel of some sort. Really, anything that expands upon some of the interesting characters we get very little time with. I tend to really like murder mysteries and thrillers, so I'll just point out my bias there. And I can't exactly remember what my feelings were about this 2 years ago, but after revisiting it, I don't think it's necessarily the best one out there, but it is so worth your time for how quick of a read it is. If you like action, then this one might tickle your fancy. City of Darkness, which follows the main character who fights other gangs, but then he's betrayed by his own boss who kills the other members of his gang and the main character's mom. So now revenge is needed as the MC assembles a crew of the best fighters to make a comeback and beat the man that took what mattered to him in life. I'll get the positives out of the way. The fights are really good and the artwork is style-wise one of my favorites ever. That is where the positives end for me. I think a lot of the characters are cool, but that's about it. Overall, I felt the story just didn't hook me strong enough in comparison to something like Feng Shen Ji with the main character or any of the side characters by the time part 1 ends. And since this series has 2 parts, the main conflict is dealt with, which was my only real motivation to keep reading the series. And even then, I found the antagonist of this part of the story to be really uninteresting. I don't know if everyone will get the pro wrestling terms I'm going to use here, but the storyline had a really cool concept but failed to make me like the face enough to make me want to see him win, and it failed to make me hate the heel enough to make me want to see him lose. The conclusion was also really weak, and so overall it just failed to give me any real reason to read the other 50 chapters that exist for part 2. However, when it comes to stuff like this, I always encourage people to check it out for themselves if they think it is interesting, and if any of you have read part 2 to this and think it's a major improvement from part 1, let me know in the comments. The goal for these types of videos is to recommend stuff that catches your eye regardless of my opinion, so if you end up finding more value in this than I did, awesome. From action to romance, Summer Bloom follows a chick who ends up working at a flower shop, and the guy that works there can bring dead flowers back to life temporarily. She is a sweet, kind individual with a lot of social awkwardness, and the male lead is a cold, harsh individual who is also very socially awkward. Misunderstandings are the name of the game with this one. This was a wholesome romance with some good mystery for the most part, but I don't think this is for me. It wasn't bad at first, but once the other romantic interest is introduced, the story just takes a turn that I couldn't really be invested in, which leads to a conclusion that was rather disappointing, although the development of the characters is solid. I just think most who will read this will be greatly interested at first, but I won't guarantee that by the end. Still, if you're new to romance series, then this one might not be a bad one to start off with, and then you can move on to some better ones. I know this isn't the most convincing, but it's worth throwing out there. Looking for Clotho. I'll completely be honest, this story had me, lost me, and then really had me. The reason why that is it switches main characters like 3 times in 7 chapters, and then the story ties them all together. So it starts off with a shut-in trying to find out about a girl in his dreams, and then eventually he finds a contract with the date of her death and a contract with his name on it also. He goes missing for a while, which causes his worried parents to call the police, which ties into this cop whose fiance went missing a long time ago, and then that ties into this guy who works for a company that ensures people die when they are supposed to. Sounds complicated? That's because it is for a bit, and it kind of gets more complicated. But this was a really good mystery that gains more clarity as it goes on, and managed to get me invested into the characters with some really strong twists and emotional scenes. I really like the subtle way it went about that at times, and if a story is able to emotionally get me connected to multiple characters that quickly, then I'm in for the ride to the end. I think the concept of an Amazon worker Grim Reaper is hilarious when I say it out loud, but presents an interesting moral dilemma with that character that allowed me to be intrigued and have a reason to see this out. actually saw art from this a long time ago, and I was surprised to find out that it wasn't just an amazing piece, but instead of one of many that came from a series called GhostBlade, currently at around 11 chapters. A brief summary is long ago an angel was murdered by a greedy human, which caused the angels to lash out in a grand conflict. 200 years have passed, and now in order to prevent a war, a princess, who is most likely a said angel, tries to turn herself in, that way war is prevented. However, before she gets the chance, she is kidnapped by the mysterious GhostBlade. We then follow the two as they travel the lands, and the mystery of both characters slowly unravels. The artwork is sensational. There isn't anything else that I've read that looks like this, and it really allows for it to be memorable just from the visuals alone. I think the storytelling at first might throw some people off, since the story seems to give so little at first, especially in terms of dialogue, which leads to small moments here and there where the character seems to say more than they should. A certain scene in particular being where GhostBlade gives his thoughts on saving a person. I felt that scene would have benefited from a more natural back and forth, but that improves quickly as the story goes on. Personally, chapters 4 and 7 were really strong chapters of showing the character's personality and building up the mystery in a visually powerful way. If there was one critique I could see for this, is that the story does move very quickly, and it can feel like there are things in between missing that would really help flesh things out more, but it is very early on, so I'm sure that will get handled later. Still, it does jump around a good amount. Overall, I'm super hooked, and there's a huge amount of potential with the characters and their dynamics, along with tying in the past, which the story opens up with in the present world today. You can check this out and support the artist via Tapas, Webtoon, and more specifically their Patreon. I need to see how this story pans out, and I'm hoping that I'm able to bring more eyes to this amazing project.
Hopefully one of these was really able to catch your eye. I do want to say real quick, thank you all so much for the support on the recent videos. It's been tremendous to hear your feedback and how much you have all been enjoying them. I will say that there is a Patreon for the channel where we're doing watch parties every Sunday. We're starting to watch Dragon Ball from the very beginning. We're only about 6 episodes in, as well as it's a great way to support the channel and help things really keep going, so I'm able to, put out stuff like this a little more consistently. As well as there is merch for the channel if you are interested. But now that I'm done self-plugging, thank you all again for watching. Hope you enjoyed. This has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.